Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and with today being Halloween, I thought we'd take a look back at something suitably spooky in the spirit of the day. Horror strategy games are hard to come by, potentially non-existent, and I can't think of any time a strategy game has really scared me in a traditional sense. Sure, they sometimes fill me with a sense of existential dread as I partake in some horrific acts, but I'm never really truly terrified. But on that very note, there have been many times that strategy games have really let us be truly evil. And I don't mean the soft, are we the baddies sort of evil, I mean the straight up, we get to kill, maim, burn for the pleasure of it just to be evil type of evil. So, with that said, here are
6 great strategy games that let us be evil.
Kicking things off with a classic, Dungeon Keeper was originally released in 1997 for MS-DOS and Windows 95, but can be bought on Origin alongside its sequel, Dungeon Keeper 2. In these games, you constructed and managed an underground dungeon, building rooms that served various functions to attract denizens of various leanings. With a dark sense of humor, the player is creating a utopia for all things evil, hoping to attract all manner of demons and creatures with evil intentions, and using them to defeat other dungeon keepers and fight back literal forces of good who try to destroy the dungeon heart and vanquish the dungeon keeper it belongs to. Starting with just this heart and some imps, you can dig tunnels and rooms out, mine gold, set traps, and lead attacks, obtaining golds to fund room creation, training, and spellcasting. As you create rooms of various types, you'll attract the appropriate creatures to come live in your dungeon and join your cause. If the ability to slap your inhabitants around in order to get them working faster, with the potential of overdoing it and killing them, doesn't make things seem a little dark, then perhaps the fact that there's a whole sacrifice mechanic allowing the player to sacrifice inhabitants in the hopes of being rewarded by the Dark God's will. And, if that doesn't do the trick, then let me describe to you the kinky Dark Mistress, a creature who only shows up if you have a torture chamber large enough, who opts to torture herself rather than train, and who actually becomes happier when you slap her or torture her. Whether playing in single-player or multiplayer, you have no choice but to play as the bad guys here. Unfortunately, the ultimate bad guys turned out to be EA when they ruined the series, releasing a crappy freemium mobile game for the series in 2014. With that said, I recall countless hours enjoying Dungeon Keeper 1 and 2, and I'd say they're definitely worth checking out if you're looking for a classic, especially the second.
It is time to be bad.
Black and White is the second brainchild of Peter Molyneux in this list. Released for Windows in 2001 and for Mac in 2002, Black and White was a fantastic take on the god game genre, where you played as a literal god, acting upon the world with your god hand and through your pet, all while being guided by your conscience. 2 very entertaining halves. No extra user interface or anything, just you, your hand, your creature, and the world. While you're able to use your hand to help harvest resources, carry people from place to place, cast miracles, or pet your pet with great affection, you're also able to use it to break things, fling followers to their deaths, drown people in the middle of the ocean, and slap your pet around to make it an angry, hulking beast. Sure, you and your creature can be good and helpful, but oh, it's so much more fun to have a beast that eats your citizens rather than grain, learning from you to play catch with their ragdolling bodies, going off to beat the crap out of enemy creatures, and overall being a vicious thing bred to fight and kill. The sequel that released in 2005 was more of the same, but moved the world's timeline ahead and made a few slight gameplay changes. But it still let you play a dark god, leaving corruption and death in your wake, raising an evil pet to slaughter in your name, and go about crushing your enemies, more often than not in a literal sense. I remember one particular mission where you had to get rid of some spoiled grain from a friendly village, and the game actually let you drop the grain into an enemy village, essentially adding up to the first ever God-given biological attack. If that isn't evil, I don't know what is. A great game, a great sequel, and a great shame that we didn't get all 7 or so games like we were supposed to. Black and White and its sequel deservingly received great reviews on release, with some great innovative thoughts. Truly a classic Molyneux game. Evil Genius released in 2004 and is readily available on Steam for a mere $10 if you'd like to partake in some classic Bond villain-style world domination. Between a world map where you can partake in dastardly acts around the world and your actual lair that you carve into a mountain to build, you play as an evil genius hoping to create the ultimate doomsday device in a bid to take over the world. Kidnap potential employees and interrogate them. Work to keep them as happy and loyal servants to your cause, set up traps for when government agents infiltrate your base, and fight them in a sort of pseudo-RTS style approach. throw them in prison, and maybe give them a minute or two of interrogation as well. Train your minions and henchmen in the arts of kung fu, build laboratories to stay ahead of the curve, and don't forget to get yourself a meat locker for the body bags, lest your henchmen start to second-guess their employer when they see their dead friends around the base. Set in an alternate timeline Cold War, you'll find yourself often embroiled in historical events, such as the Cuban Missile Crisis, all while suitably styled in a campy, 60s or so style aesthetic, tone, and themes. Perhaps not as dark and evil like some of the other games on this list, what with its bright and goofy visuals, but what could be more evil than playing as a Blofeld reference, or even worse, Dr. Evil. The Battle for Middle-earth was a real-time strategy game that finally scratched an itch every Lord of the Rings fan probably had since they were first exposed to Middle-earth. The good guys have their campaign, sure, but the evil forces of Middle-earth are the ones we're here to talk about. The campaign begins with Isengard's betrayal, and we follow Saruman conquering Rohan. We see the fall of Helm's Deep and the deaths of Theoden and Éomer, then taking us to the assault on Gondor and the destruction of Minas Tirith. The good campaign follows the story from the movies, but the evil campaign gives us something fresh and new. Leading the Uruk-hai, the Orcs, the Haradrim, the Mumakuls, and Trolls, you get a full hands-on experience of being in charge of the darkest force in Middle-earth. Gollum, two of the Nazgul, and the Witch King of Angmar all appear as heroes for the forces of evil, and whether you're playing as good or evil in single or multiplayer, the game did a great job bringing us into the world of The Lord of the Rings, adapting the world into video game mechanics without sacrificing the setting. Also, there are Balrogs. You can summon a Balrog. The Battle for Middle-earth and its sequel are both fantastic games, with the latter focusing on the war in the north, but taking some liberties with the source material. Unfortunately, with the license having run out, there's no way to get the game unless you already own it or can find a physical copy in a bargain bin somewhere. It's unfortunate because the game has some great mods for it, including an HD remake. Few gaming memories match up to leading the battle against Minas Tirith, massive armies, Mumakuls, and Balrogs all working together to crush the forces of good. Go ahead, Gondor. Call for aid as much as you want.
One ring, darkness shall once again fall upon Middle-earth.
Total War Warhammer released only a couple years ago in 2016, and being set in the Warhammer fantasy world, it naturally has the forces of good up against the forces of evil. Between the turn-based campaign and the real-time battles, this isn't just your standard level of bad guys at war either. It's a whole gradient of evil. We get the vampire counts, who arguably aren't all that evil. They just raise the dead to do their bidding, but otherwise they're pretty okay compared to what else we're about to see. In my humble opinion, they're comparatively downright nice people. The orcs, or greenskins, are just led by base instinct and a desire for Wa. If we want to talk about evil, we need to take a look at some of the DLC factions. The Warriors of Chaos, for example, who worship the dark gods of the universe, literally killing, maiming, and burning to appease these gods and nothing else. They are hell-bent on destruction and devastation, and one of their primary modes of conquest doesn't involve conquest at all. Instead, you're simply burning down entire settlements. But it gets worse. The Beastmen, or the Cloven Ones, are mutant humanoids that have been twisted and corrupted by the influence of the evil in the world from these very same gods. They prey on the weak and defenseless, basically committing genocide most times. Winning battles lets you eat the enemy you've captured during battle, and that's not the worst thing you can do. When you capture an enemy settlement, you have the option of looting and burning it down like a regular bad guy, or you can raise and defile. Now the game softens the edge a little here. Raise and defile basically translates to ravaging a population, making makeshift totems using the dead bodies of the local populace, and more or less defecating over these bodies. It's pretty rough, and it's pretty damn evil. I'd like to say that this is as dark as it gets, and in some ways it seems like as dark as it gets, but the sequel features an entire economy based on slavery with not-so-subtle sexual overtones, and not-so-consensual overtones either. It's a dark world, it's an evil world. Crusader Kings II released in 2012, and between the base game and all the DLC, you can be a scoundrel, scumbag, evil son of a bitch in the most realistic of ways that perhaps makes it all the more evil. A strategy game where you play as a dynasty rather than a nation, you have all sorts of options available to you. You can be a holy man, abiding the law of the land and God. You can be a loyal vassal to your liege and a good liege lord to your vassals. or perhaps you will partake in the 7 sins and follow the biblical definition of evil. The game is a great joy, especially when you're playing down the dark path. Regicide, fratricide, parricide, patricide, prolicide, sororicide. These are all of the various sides that you can partake in, and they are all some very dark deeds, and that is just scratching the surface. Adultery, incest, seduction, they cover a whole other sin, letting you bed anyone from your maids to your rivals' wives, possibly instigating entire wars, or potentially gaining you some influence down the line, allowing you to secure a better future for your line. Unless, of course, you happen to be seducing your liege lord's wife, who happens to also be your sister-in-law. Meanwhile, you can literally join satanic cults and personally participate in some particularly dark deeds and rituals as you try to spread your influence, appeasing all that is unholy through sacrifice and orgies and ungodly amounts of alcohol and other types of imbibing. Play chess with the Grim Reaper, plot assassinations to secure your holdings, and throw dissenters into the dungeon to torture them. Play your cards right, and they'll survive maimed for what little life is left, an armless, legless, earless husk of a person. But hey, worst case scenario, they die. Be a tyrant king, strip your vassals of their holdings at the slightest sign of disagreement, kill your own sons if you don't like them as your heirs, do what needs to be done to ensure your succession is safe and that your line lives on till the end of days. And hey, sire some bastards while you're at it. And there you have it, folks, my 6 favorite opportunities to be truly evil in strategy games. Whether you're a literal god, a dungeon manager, or merely a brutal king or queen, there's some joy to be had for everyone. What games have you enjoyed that let you take a darker path? Are there any particularly evil memories you have in your gaming careers? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, for more strategy gaming content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and check out our Discord to join a community of more like-minded individuals, hopefully not all as evil as this video might make us seem. A massive thanks to all of my patrons and channel members for supporting the channel, and a massive thanks to you for watching. Till next time, happy Halloween, and cheers.